5 people vanished, each one left behind something that shouldn't exist. A car, engine running, doors locked from the inside, no keys, no explanation. A kitchen table with a meal still warm when police arrived, plates set, food untouched, a phone with 43 missed calls. They never picked up once. A pair of shoes placed perfectly side by side at the edge of a bridge. No body was ever found below. And a diary open to a single page, torn clean out. Whatever was written, someone didn't want it read. None of these 5 people were ever found, so what did they know? To understand what happened, you have to understand who the Sodders were. George and Jenny Sodder had built something real in Fayetteville, West Virginia. George had immigrated from Italy, started a trucking business, and raised a big, loud, loving family. By 1945, they had 10 children, 9 of whom were still living at home. The family was known in town. George was outspoken. He was openly critical of Mussolini, even before America entered World War II. That detail matters later. The Sodder home sat on a rural property, and on Christmas Eve 1945, most of the family had stayed up late. The kids were too excited for presents, too wired to sleep. George went to bed early. Jenny stayed up. By around midnight, the house was quiet. And then, sometime in the early hours of Christmas morning, everything went wrong. A fire broke out on the first floor. Jenny woke up to smoke. She grabbed the 4 youngest children and the older ones who were nearest to her and got outside. Her husband got out. But when they looked back at the house, 5 of their children were still inside: Marion, Jenny, Louise, Martha, and little Betty. And the house was already burning fast, too fast. Here is where the Sodder children case stops being a tragedy and starts being something else entirely. George Sodder ran back to the house immediately. He tried to get inside. He couldn't. He ran to the side of the house to grab the ladder he always kept leaning against the wall. It was gone. Someone had moved it. He tried to climb a tree to reach the upper windows. He couldn't get high enough. He ran to his trucks to use them to boost himself up. One truck wouldn't start. The second one wouldn't either. Both had been working perfectly the day before. He ran to a neighbor's house to call the fire department. The line was dead. The phones in the area reportedly weren't working. Later, investigators would note that the phone line to the Sodder house had been cut, physically severed, before the fire started. A neighbor who was awake that night reported seeing a car parked on the road near the Sodder property, partially blocking the driveway. A stranger's car. Nobody ever identified it or who was inside. The fire department, when they were finally reached and finally arrived, didn't get there until 8 in the morning. The house had burned completely, and when they went through the ashes, they found nothing. No human remains, no bones, 5 children, and nothing. And this is where the story stops making sense. The official conclusion was that the 5 Sodder children perished in the fire. Case closed. But almost immediately, that conclusion started falling apart. Fire experts, including an arson investigator brought in later, pointed out a critical problem. The fire burned at an estimated temperature that would not have been sufficient to fully cremate a human body. Full cremation requires sustained temperatures above 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit for several hours. The Sodder house fire, by all accounts, was not that kind of fire. Human bones survive fires. Teeth survive fires. There should have been something. There was nothing. George and Jenny refused to accept the official story. They hired private investigators. They pushed local authorities. And here is what those early investigations turned up, or failed to turn up. Coroner's inquest was reportedly held, but no remains were ever entered into evidence because there were none to enter. A heart was reportedly found in the rubble months later by the Sodder family themselves during their own search, It was sent for analysis, and experts said it appeared to be a beef liver, possibly placed there. No one ever explained how it got there or why. One theory suggests the evidence may have been tampered with. No official conclusion was ever reached on that piece of evidence. And then there were the reported sightings. Multiple witnesses in the area reportedly told George Sodder that they had seen his children, alive, being driven away in a car on Christmas Eve night. A woman at a hotel in Charleston said she saw several children matching the Sodder kids' descriptions, traveling with adults she didn't recognize. The children, she said, looked frightened. The report was never formally investigated to any satisfying conclusion. George and Jenny Sodder spent decades searching. They erected a billboard on the highway outside Fayetteville, a massive sign with photographs of their 5 missing children and a reward for information. That billboard stood for years. It became a landmark. People drove past it knowing the story, knowing the faces. And in 1967, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny Sodder received something in the mail, an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photograph. The photograph showed a young man, probably in his late teens or early 20s. On the back, someone had written the name Louis Sodder, the name of one of her missing sons. Jenny said the young man in the photograph looked like what Louis would look like, grown up. She showed it to family members. Several of them agreed the resemblance was striking. The photograph was reportedly sent to investigators. No one was ever able to identify who sent it, where it came from, or who the young man in the image was. To this day, that photograph has never been fully explained. George Sodder died in 1969, still believing his children had been taken, not killed. Jenny lived until 1989. She never stopped looking. She reportedly kept the billboard up as long as she could. She went to her grave without an answer. So what actually happened to the Sodder children? Remember the question we opened with: 5 kids, a burned house, and 0 bones. Here is where we have to be honest about what we know and what we don't. The most widely discussed theory among researchers and investigators is that the children were abducted, taken that night, possibly by people connected to organized crime or individuals who had a grievance against George Sodder. George had made enemies. He had publicly criticized Mussolini in a community that had some fascist sympathizers. There were reportedly threats made against him in the years before the fire. According to some investigators and researchers who have studied the case, the circumstantial evidence, the cut phone line, the missing ladder, the disabled trucks, the blocking car, the eyewitness accounts of children being driven away, points toward a coordinated effort to remove those children from that house under cover of the fire. One theory suggests the fire itself may have been set deliberately to create chaos and cover the abduction. But here is the honest truth. None of this has ever been proven. There is no confirmed suspect. There is no confirmed motive. The official record still lists the Sodder children as having died in the fire. And yet the official record has never been able to explain the absence of any physical evidence to support that conclusion. The case was never formally closed because it was never formally solved. We started this file with a question: 5 children, a burned house, 0 bones. And after everything, the cut phone line, the missing ladder, the blocked driveway, the eyewitnesses, the anonymous photograph of a grown man who looked like a missing boy, we still don't have an answer. What we do have is a family that refused to disappear quietly, refused to accept a conclusion that the evidence couldn't support, and spent their entire lives, decades of their lives, holding a sign on the side of a West Virginia highway that said, "We're still looking." Do you know where our children are? The Sodder children case has been studied by historians, investigators, journalists, and amateur researchers for 80 years. No one has closed it. No one has been able to. Because the truth is, in a case where 5 children vanished on Christmas Eve and left no trace in the ashes, there are really only 2 possibilities. Either something happened in that fire that science and investigation have never been able to explain, or those 5 children walked out of that house alive and someone made sure the world would never know. The cold archive never closes a file. What do you think happened? Tell us in the comments and subscribe because the next file is already open.